We're live with Sree's special election coverage, the latest news, analysis, and special guests. Our host, of course, will be Sree Sreenivasan. This is the first of several shows that we're doing. We'll be live for 7 hours in partnership with Scroll in India. You see the schedule on the screen. We have tonight's show. We have tomorrow night, Monday night Eastern Time, Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern. We also have a special show we're producing with Indian Express, Tuesday, 11 p.m. Eastern, which will be Wednesday morning, 9:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time. These shows are produced by Digimentors, the digital social AI events consultancy founded by Sree Sreenivasan and his colleague Andrew Lee several years ago. We also do event amplification, AI workshops, AI policy, strategy, and scenario planning. Joining us this evening in New York and Monday morning in India will be Cliff Albright, co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter. We're looking forward to having him join the show. Joining Sree as an analyst will be Mary C. Curtis, CQ Roll Call columnist and Equal Time podcast host. And of course, our host is Sree Sreenivasan, a New York City-based journalist, co-founder and CEO of Digimentors. With that, Sree.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much. That was our executive producer, Neil Parekh, who is in Washington, D.C. I'm live in New York. I'm Sree Sreenivasan. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being here for the special election coverage, one of 8 hours of live TV that we're doing, bring to you on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as on digimentors.group, our website. We are so grateful to our friends at scroll.in and Scroll Global as we cover a truly international election. We are in a year of elections and there's so much to talk about. And the US elections are about 48 hours before the major polls close. And we will bring you analysis. And as we saw from the sheet earlier, we have a lot of shows. Tonight is Monday night. Today's Sunday night, we have a show. Monday night, we have a show. We also have a show Tuesday at noon, Tuesday at 9 p.m. All of these shows will be on Scroll. And then on Tuesday at 11 p.m., we have a special 1-hour episode just on Indian Express's social media channels. And then we'll have a wrap up on Wednesday morning. All of this is to help us shed light and understand the elections in the United States, not just the presidential election, but also to understand what's happening, what we call the down ballot races. And we have 2 great guests who are with us here today, and you will meet them in just a moment. But before that, I want to tell you that we are dedicating this show to the memory of our friend Vibhuti Patel. Vibhuti was a journalist, writer, author, commentator, teacher who passed away today about 4 hours ago. I had the honor of standing next to her when she passed after her long struggle with kidney disease. She was 82 years old. She's someone who inspired me and paved the way for so many successful South Asian journalists in the United States. We will forever be grateful to her. I'll read you a couple of quick quotes from Mitra Kalita, who runs journalism startups URL Media and Epicenter New York City. South Asian media executives, particularly us women, owe so much to Vibhuti. She paved the path for us, one allowing us to juggle management, motherhood, and societal expectations of our place in the world. She shattered the ladder over and over. I'm still in awe over it. And journalist, writer, teacher Suketu Mehta said Vibhuti Ben is a way of saying elder sister, was an inspiration to me and all of us young Indian journalists when we were starting out in our careers in New York City. She was always incredibly generous with her time and her advice. She was one of a kind, and I will miss her. We will miss you, Vibhuti. Thank you so much. She made sure that she voted before she passed, because yesterday I was with her and she filled out an early mail ballot and was able to send that in. Vibhuti, we love you. We know you're watching and paying close attention. Last year, we celebrated her 50 years in America and in American journalism. And by the way, she wore a sari every day to her work at Newsweek, where she was an editor. And you can see a picture from her early days at Newsweek. And then towards the end of her time at Newsweek, she also worked at the Wall Street Journal and so many other places. Thank you so much, Vibhuti, for everything you did for journalism and for journalists. With that, we will talk about the elections she was paying so much attention to. We are here today in my special election coverage, and we have two great guests. First, let me bring on Cliff Albright, who's with us, co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter. Cliff, welcome.
Hey, Sree, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. We know how busy you are. I'm surprised you were able to fit us in. I know you just have a few minutes. We're really grateful to you for being here, for being part of our election coverage. 48 hours to go. I'm a bundle of nerves. Tell me how you're feeling.
Probably about the same. Just a lot of excitement. I'm actually sitting here in North Carolina. That's one of the battleground states in this election. And I'm sitting here in Wilmington, North Carolina right now, on my way to Greensboro tomorrow, Charlotte on Tuesday. And so, there's a lot of energy on the streets. I'm feeling a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. But you also have a lot of anxiety. People are nervous. They know that even though you've got two incredibly different candidates, that it's still a lot closer than a lot of people would like for it to be, and that there's still like this hanging cloud over our heads of the possibility of another term, another Donald Trump term. And so you got this mixture of excitement and joy combined with, anxiety and concern, but we're seeing like a lot of great energy in the streets. Turnout has been pretty good, not just in North Carolina, but in a bunch of the other states where we do our work. And so we're just going to keep grinding for the next 2 days and see what happens. But
we'll break it all down. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, and we'll break it all down. Folks, what makes our shows different is the chance for us to have a conversation with our audience. As you can see here, we bring in the comments. So tell us where you're watching from. Tell us how you're feeling. Tell us if you voted already. What are your questions? We have experts who can help you. And Dr. Sujana Chandrasekhar says, I was just telling someone at a party about Black Voters Matter. So isn't that pretty cool? And Dr. Tachi is watching from Fort Lauderdale. Good evening, all. Dr. Tachi has excellent shows, and we should all be watching her work. So my question, before we bring in our friend Mary C. Curtis to join us, is tell us a little bit about Black Voters Matter, and how have you been framing your work the last few months and now the last 2 days? We also have a video here. We're looking at your website. Very powerful stuff.
Yeah, so what we've been doing is we've been trying to reach out to Black voters using every mechanism that we can. That's phone calls, that's door knocks, that's text messages, that's billboards, that's radio ads, that's digital ads on social media and connected TV, depending on how you watch your TV. If you're on one of these streaming apps, you might see one of our commercials there. Smoke signals, I mean, you name it. We're trying everything that we can to reach out to Black voters, and including traveling around on what we call the Blackness Busted America, and you see it there in the video that you all are showing. And so we've been traveling around really all year long, because we have a belief. One of our core beliefs is that in order for Black Voters to matter, you can't just do this work in the last 2 weeks of an election cycle, or even the last 2 months. We call it the 365 work. And so we've been talking to voters, building relationships with local organizations all throughout the year. But of course, we're in the crunch right now, and so we're taking it up a notch, and just trying to have conversations and get people the information that they need, because a lot of there's a lot of reasons why people don't turn out. Sometimes it's enthusiasm, sometimes it's voter suppression, sometimes it's just not feeling like you're adequately informed, like you don't know who the candidates are, or even what the positions are. Like what does the lieutenant governor do? What does the school chancellor do? And so, part of what we do is just get people the information they need, whether it's about candidates, about the ballot process, about where to go, how to find your polling place. When you arm people, when you give people the information that they need, they're more likely to engage.
And you're doing such a great job. And that's why you're a little more relaxed maybe the last 2 days, because you've been working 365 to make this happen. Tell us the keys that you're going to be looking for success. What are the things how will we know this election's going the way that you want?
I think that, when we see what the turnout is looking like, and of course we've already seen some of the turnout in terms of the early vote turnout. And you've got a lot of people who have been speculating and giving so-called expert opinions about, who's been turning out, how much of it is Democrat versus Republican, how much of it is Black turnout, right? And so you got some kind of an idea from that, but really not until we get to election day and when we see like how much of a shift has there been from Republicans who have shifted from election day to early vote, and then Black voters and some Democrats that have actually shifted in the other direction from mail and early to actually maybe coming out more on election day. And so we'll find out. We'll start getting some clues about that, during that first wave, the first few hours, and we'll be out on the streets early on Tuesday morning, trying to encourage people to go vote. And so, yeah, that'll be the first sign. And then, you'll have people that'll be doing exit polls and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think if we look at the makeup, and if it's greater than or even similar to what we've seen in terms of Black turnout on other election days, I think that's going to be a pretty telling sign.
Thank you. I think we're ready now to bring on Mary C. Curtis, our friend and expert on all things elections and politics. We're so happy to have Mary with us. She's a CQ roll call columnist and equal time podcast host. Mary C. Curtis.
Well, thank you for welcoming me. I was listening to Cliff's conversation with great interest. I am based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and for so long you just heard Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. But then people are looking a lot now at North Carolina with 16 electoral votes. The last time a Democrat won was in 2008. Barack Obama won by a sliver, but it is very close. And last election, 4 years ago, Trump won, but it was his slimmest margin. And it's a fascinating state because you do have these urban areas, cities, and then you have more rural counties. We have also the complication of Hurricane Helene and how that will affect the voting. But you have seen so many candidates come here. Yesterday, late afternoon, I was here in Charlotte attending a rally for Kamala Harris, with Kamala Harris, the vice president, on the last day of early voting in North Carolina. She brought along Kerry Washington and John Bon Jovi and a host of others. And today, actually, Tim Walz was in North Carolina to encourage people to get out and vote. We also saw yesterday Donald Trump, who wants to be president again in North Carolina, because I think that means that the internals or the polls are showing that it is a very close race, and it's going to come down to, as Cliff said, turnout. Mecklenburg County, where Charlotte is located, has traditionally had pretty low turnout, and they're trying to get that enthusiasm up. And it's interesting too, because when you look at our registrations, I guess I'm wearing purple because it's a purple state. It's 1/3 Democratic, 1/3 Republican, 1/3 unaffiliated. So a lot really depends on how those unaffiliated voters, how they vote and what they decide to do at the last minute. So it's going to be quite interesting. Donald Trump pretty much needs the state. It's hard to see him winning without North Carolina. The vice president doesn't need it necessarily if she's going to win some of those other blue wall states and Sunbelt states, but she sure like to have that in her pocket in case some of those other states don't come through. So it's, yeah.
I want to jump in real quick. I know we only have Cliff for a few more
sure.
minutes, but Cliff, you were in Wilmington, North Carolina today. Tell us what you're going to be doing between now and the election. You're going to be staying in North Carolina, right? This is where, I mean, you see this, as Mary is saying, you see this as the battleground, right?
Yeah, we're based in, our organization is based in Georgia. We do work in 25 states, differing degrees, but we're based in Georgia. A lot of people know us for Georgia because of the 2020 election and 2021 Senate runoffs and then the Warnock election in 22. But so people have said, "Oh, you're going to be in Georgia on election day," and I said, "No, I'm going to be in North Carolina. In fact, I'm spending the last 5 days of this cycle, so I've already been here for a couple of days, and I'll be here tomorrow and on election day, because that's how much I believe, that's how much our organization believes in this state, in the possibility of Black voters coming out in big numbers, and the possibility of this state, turning Democratic and voting for Kamala Harris. And not just Kamala Harris, because, as Mary will say, there's a bunch of other critical seats that are on the ballot, everything from, the governor's race, which, a lot of the country knows about because you've got a Black Nazi running. And you've got
Mark Robinson, right?
Right, Mark Robinson. You've got the congressional races. You've got a state education race where one of the candidates, the Republican candidate, famously talked about President Obama needs to be shot by a firing squad. I mean, these are the kinds of people that are up and down the ballot. And so part of what we've been doing is encouraging everybody not just to go vote, and not just to go vote for president, but to go up and down the ballot. So yes, I'll be here for the next couple of days because North Carolina is, as Mary said, if Kamala Harris wins this state, there's really no path by which Donald Trump would be able to return to the White House.
Absolutely. And I want to give a quick shout out, Cliff, to Justice Aid. I'm on the board for Justice Aid, which is a great organization. Mary Curtis, actually, you came up for a concert we held a few years ago, a benefit. But Justice Aid raises money through the arts to support social justice causes. And we were so proud to support your work over the last 2 years, Cliff. You and Latasha and the rest of the crew on the Blackest Bus in America have really made a difference, and really inspires us in terms of the work that you're doing. So thank you so much. It really means a lot. And it's a great, what a great way to kick off this series of shows that Sree is doing in terms of special election coverage with Black Voters Matter. Thank you, Sree. Or Cliff, sorry.
No, one, I just want to say thank you to you and to our Justice Aid family. You all have been phenomenal over the past couple of years, and just also just finally say, you asked, what are we going to be doing over these next couple of days?
Yeah.
And part of what we're doing isn't just about getting people to go vote. It's about getting people to understand that we all have a role to play as organizers, right? So it's not just me telling you to go vote. It's not just Mary or other, organizers or scholars or whatever to telling people to go vote. Everybody we touch is an organizer. Everybody we touch has a role to play. Even if you've already voted, we still want to talk to you because we want to give you the tools to go out and tell 5 other people that they need to go vote. And so everybody's got a role to play. Everybody can be an organizer. Everybody can spread the word, even if it's just sharing a text message or doing a Facebook post or actually bringing somebody to the polls. And so that's what we're going to be doing over these next couple of days, trying to get everybody to vote, but also trying to get everybody we touch to be an organizer, including everybody listening to this right now.
Thank you.
Will you have time for a cup of coffee when you get to Charlotte?
Yes, please,
Sure.
please.
I'll hit you up. Okay.
One thing before you go, Cliff, is that this election, we know that there are certain groups that are going to be scapegoated if the election goes in a certain way, where they're going to say this is the fault of, say, Muslim voters who decided to vote for Jill Stein or Donald Trump in Michigan, or Black men who didn't vote in this place or that place. Break that down for us as someone who focuses on the African-American community. What does it mean for some of the lack of enthusiasm we might be seeing among some Black men in voting for Kamala Harris? And what does that mean? And is it fair when we know white women who have so much at stake as well, so many of them are voting for Donald Trump? So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come back to the point that you just ended on in terms of white women or other demographics. But first, just in terms of the scapegoating, you're absolutely right. We've been seeing this, for at least the past year and a half, where they've been trying to, just drive home this message of what black men are not going to do, right, and that we have low enthusiasm, and it just hasn't been matching, like the energy that I've been seeing and hearing in these communities. I've heard some black men that are very passionate about supporting Kamala Harris. I've heard some that maybe weren't passionate and maybe were on the fence, but the more that they've seen some of these sexist, misogynist attacks against her, said, you know what, I wasn't crazy about her, but that, like, that language, this treatment simply is not fair. And so I believe that at the end of the day, at least 80% of black men are going to support Kamala Harris. I think that it may wind up being even closer to being between 85 and 90%. We always have some number, some 10% that always vote Republican. They've been voting Republican for 10 years. They've been voting Republican for not just 10 years, but for decades. They were voting Republican when George Bush was giving out that church money, that faith-based initiative money. And so we've always got that 10% of our community that's conservative. It's that other 10% that's between the 80 and that conservative 10%. That's where the battle is and where discussions are taking place. And it's not even so much about Donald Trump. It's really about whether or not they'll actually come out to vote at all, right? And so that's the discussion. But at the end of the day, at least 80% of black men are going to support Kamala Harris, and we need to be having more of a discussion about these other demographics. It's still a possibility that Donald Trump may get over 50% of white women. The percentage of white women that voted for Trump in 2020 was higher than in 2016. And so, it's been great to see a lot of the movement and a lot of discussion, and women are turning out in huge numbers. My wife was telling me that she saw a sign outside of another house that we drive by a lot that always has a Trump sign. And today she drove by, and now it has two signs. It's still got the Trump sign, but right next to it, same yard, it's also got a Harris sign. And so she said, "Oh, I think the wife in that household finally decided, to put a sign in the yard as well." So, so we're seeing that. But at the end of the day, the scapegoating, the negative predictions around what black voters in general, what black men are going to do, it's been very harmful. In some ways, it can almost create a self-fulfilling prophecy. But that's why it's important that we're out here doing the work that we do, so that we can convince people. Don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to the people that always doubt us. These are the same people that doubted us in Georgia, that said that, you couldn't have a black senator and a Jewish senator win in a runoff election, because certainly black voters are not going to come out in a runoff, because we never do. Like, that's the narrative that they were trying to say. And folks in Georgia showed them. And I believe that in this cycle, black voters across the country, including here in North Carolina, are going to shock a lot of people.
Thank you. Cliff Albright, I know you have to leave. I want to tell you that Pradnya is watching while she's boarding for a plane to Paris. So she's paying attention. She's listening. And everyone, please tag your friends. And everyone, check out Black Voters Matter, their website, their social media. Please support them. And what is your energy secret, Cliff? Because you have a lot of energy. What is your secret?
Oh, wow. One, just, staying in touch with, my faith and our history, and just knowing that we've been through this, and we've got ancestors that have been through much more than this. And so that keeps me grounded. Secondly, just being surrounded by good people, incredible coworkers, including my dear sister friend, Latasha Brown, who many of your listeners viewers may have seen before, and my wife, April England Albright, who's quietly one of our third co-founders. And so, we've just got, and our entire staff, and by being out in the community. So let me say this, because if you're somebody who's feeling that anxiety that I talked about earlier, there's no better way to deal with that anxiety than by actually being out and having these conversations with people. Because when you're involved in the work, it actually helps to settle some of that. And so part of why I still go on these bus tours, right, even though I'm the ED, even though, we've got a whole staff, part of the reason I go is by being on the ground and talking to these amazing people, including our local organizational partners. It helps to ground me. It helps to deal with some of the anxiety. It helps to remind me that at the end of the day, we do fight back, and we have an incredible community that's going to show out and show up.
And you remind us why Black voters matter. Cliff Albright, Executive Director, thank you very much. Get some rest, get some sleep, and go get them. Get them.
See you in Charlotte.
What's that? What's that S word you said? Did you say sleep?
What's that, right?
What's that? Well, and also we want to remind everyone, election night isn't when it's over. It's going to take a couple of days for the results to come in. North Carolina is going to count early, but it's going to take some more time. And in fact, we'd like to go and show you some of the ways in which you can try to understand when the elections might be called. But we'll let Cliff go. Thank you very much, Cliff.
Thank you so much, Cliff. Great having you. That was great.
Yeah, Neil, you have a graphic of the different ways in which we can think about the election. So while you're pulling that up, Mary, what are your thoughts on what Cliff had to say, especially about the white women, African-American men, etc.?
I want to reiterate and just really emphasize what he said. If Trump wins, it won't be because of Black men or Black women or minority folks, because yes, Kamala Harris is going to get a majority of Black male votes. That's happening. And I think when we say that, we basically cede, white men, of course, are going to vote for Trump because they're the demographic that is going for him in a very strong way. He is making these appeals to particularly young white men, going on these bro podcasts and trying to put this macho kind of image in front of them. So it's actually white males where the gender gap is happening. So I think that we really need to say that because they are setting it up. Even Trump is saying, if Jews don't vote for me, it'll be your fault. They're setting up these different groups where really, let's face it, his strongest constituency is white evangelicals. And, I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later. And he also talked about his inspiration. I just want to put, while Neil's getting that up, a quick word that my mother was an elections judge in charge of several precincts. Election day was a sacred holiday. I had 3 elder siblings in the civil rights movement who marched. And so I could never not vote. And it just does really sadden me to know that election workers now are coming in for so many attacks, accusations of fraud and all of this, and knowing how those folks who do that, and she had a Republican and Democrat in each precinct, they are doing great civic work. Volunteering, some of them, it's duty. And to know that they are being harassed, so many of them, is, I think, a tragedy for our democracy because we couldn't go on without those workers.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Mary. So this is the one of the pieces that we want to share with you as we prepare for what may be a long night, a long few days, but we don't know. So when to expect results in each state on election night and beyond. Here's a quick chart. Georgia counts fast, but watch the vote margin. North Carolina counts fast, and this is from the New York Times, but has new rules. And we certainly will see what impact, how long it'll take to get through all the mail-in votes. Pennsylvania is likely to take longer than election night. Michigan could be faster than in the past. Wisconsin is likely to finish most counting Wednesday. So if that blue wall is part of that equation, it might be a while till we know. Arizona and Nevada could both take days, which is interesting. But the other thing I wanted to point out is this piece from the Washington Post, which is saying that the election is uncertain, but it might not be close. And this is where it kind of gave me pause. Close polls don't tell the whole story. It's not unlikely that if we see a typically sized polling error, like we did in 2016 when Trump ran against Hillary Clinton, and then 2020 when Biden ran against Trump, if there's a typically sized polling error, one candidate could run away with the election. According to this analysis by Lenny Bronner for the Post, if you scroll down here, and I want to highlight this particular paragraph that really got my attention, the reality is that when all votes are counted, it's not at all unlikely that one of the two candidates will have won all of the swing states. If that happened, Trump would end up with 312 electoral votes, or Harris would win 319. Neither of those potential outcomes would seem close. Have you seen any of this, Mary? Have you given any thought to this idea that if the swing states all go one way or all go the other way, it could be potentially a landslide?
I have. It's kind of interesting because I don't know, folks, I might have read of this Iowa poll by a very respected pollster that puts Iowa, it gives Harris believe a 3-point lead. Now, most folks are saying she probably won't win Iowa, but it shows she may be closer in some states. So maybe it would be tip the balance. And they said that that particular poll said people are undercounting older women over 65, and independents. So if that small sliver of undecideds, and I don't know how anyone could be undecided at this point, break for one candidate or the other, we will see that maybe that person will have a sweep. And that's when you wonder if little things could matter. Does that rally at Madison Square Garden that had folks insulting everyone and calling Kamala Harris the Antichrist and making jokes about every ethnic group, will that tip some of the groups in these states, a large group of Puerto Rican voters in Pennsylvania and in Florida, some maybe who weren't going to vote, as Cliff said, will that energize them? Who knows? So that's when the so-called October surprises matter. Although Trump has shown he is his own brand and he has gotten away with so much. Remember how many people thought the Access Hollywood tape would sink him in 2016?
Yeah.
And it didn't.
I just want to point out that one of our viewers, Ken Fisher, who is in Iowa, sent us this article to make sure that we had it for the show. Trump no longer leads in a state he carried twice, according to new Iowa poll.
And it's
Sree,
a very
you want me to
respected
comment?
pollster there, yeah.
Yes.
And Kieran Khalid is asking about turnout in Iowa and turnout in any of these states, right? That's what's going to matter. We talk so much about the polls, but the polls are asking if the election were held today. The elections are not being held today. They're being held, of course, now. They are because of early voting. So the ground game has been so interesting. And one of the October surprises that people have pointed out is how much stronger the ground game for Vice President Harris has been in so many states. And that's been kind of fascinating to watch. And Kieran says Teflon Trump. That's right. Donald Trump, we said that he was out when he called John McCain a loser. We said he was out so many times. And even with the Access Hollywood tape, which came out in October of 2016, it didn't have an impact. And he said if he shot somebody, he wouldn't lose anyone. In fact, he would gain voters, is my opinion, that people would be even more enthusiastic if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue. It's ridiculous to say. We can laugh about it, but if we don't laugh, we will be crying, because that's the way the world is. But since we're talking about maps, I think it's important for us to actually study a map for just a moment. I'm going to come in a little closer on this so we can just kind of understand where we are. And this is an electoral college map. You need 270 to win, and this is from a website called 270 to Win. And what it does is it shows you where the solid blue are and the solid red. So you can see that the blue adds up to 191 and the red adds up to 122 in the solid. And then you have some of the others, but with the leans blue, leans red, and then that gives you a total of 226 Democrat and 219 Republican. And the 7 swing states, you'll hear about them again and again in the next 48 hours plus: Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. So just to show you how this would work, and you can help me with this, Mary, there are 16 votes in North Carolina. So let's say these turn for Harris, then she's already at 242, while the Republicans are 219. If Pennsylvania goes towards her, then you'll see she's already at 261. So you can see the path for her if she gets North Carolina. Now, let's say North Carolina goes to Trump. What does that mean in terms of where this goes? So as you talk, I can click over the various states there.
Yes. Yeah. No. If maybe he gets Pennsylvania, or they talk about Michigan now. That so many of the folks upset about Gaza say they're going to not vote for Harris. That would be a chunk of votes that would put Trump over the top. He appeared on
very
stage
close,
with
as you can see there,
very
260.
close. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Then yes. And if he gets that one in Nebraska, right? That one. But we haven't brought up the fact of that this is a post-Dobbs world. So you do wonder if some of the pollsters aren't taking into account some of the women who are very upset, and maybe some of these older women, they can't have any children anymore, but hey, they remember what life was like before Roe v. Wade, and they don't want to perhaps go back to that for the country or for maybe their children and grandchildren. So we really don't know. And there's abortion measures on some ballots, as in Florida. So what kind of effect will that have? We'll see. Obviously, there's some folks who are pro anti-abortion who will vote accordingly, but who knows? You have those deaths of some women in Texas, solidly red state, but will that give Colin Allred a little bit of a bump over Ted Cruz, who is not particularly popular? And when asked about this issue and women dying in the state, he has basically said, nobody in Texas cares about that. That's a media manufactured issue. I'm not so sure that's true. So we'll see. Even some of the states that go as expected, what is the margin? Look at these margins and we'll see what happens. In Iowa, maybe some of those farmers aren't too happy about these proposed tariffs because they know what it will mean in a Trump administration. We just don't know. When people come up to me all the time and say, what's going to happen? And I say, I have no idea.
And thank you. And as you're looking at this map, just get used to it, folks. We're going to show it to you again and again in the next 2 days. You'll see Nebraska has a split vote system, and Maine has a split vote system, so 2-1-1 and a 4-1, but those are not going to matter. Yeah. Nebraska is definitely going to be Republican, and Maine is definitely going to go Democrat.
Yeah. Now, Trump has been surprisingly strong in Nevada, which I see as one of those states that it isn't colored in yet. Yeah. And we'll see, he could win that. On the other hand, that strong union vote, folks work at the casinos. I remember the late Senator Harry Reid used to be really disciplined about getting those folks out. So what kind of, as you say, the ground game? The Republican Party really farmed out some of their ground game to other folks, and I've heard that it's just not as effective. Unfortunately, it seems they're putting a lot of their money into fighting election results. Trump has been encouraged by Steve Bannon and others to just declare victory before all the votes are counted. In that case, you need a strong Justice Department, strong state officials to make sure every vote is counted. I've been very discouraged to see some folks setting fire to some ballot boxes. There's a real worry that there will be some post-election violence because the election system, people like Trump and some folks have really put a lot of doubts in people's minds that the vote count will be fair.
Here's a comment from Sudha Parekh. Most of the Muslim communities, she says, are not going to vote for Vice President Harris due to Gaza and the Lebanon situation. And this is where we were talking about this scapegoating. And to my mind, the Harris campaign let some, they've separated themselves from the Biden administration's policies, but they still left enough room there for things like the fact that that of all people, Donald Trump can say he is the one who's going to help Muslims. And we know that Elon Musk is running ads in Gaza saying she's too pro-Israel. I mean, running ads, in Michigan saying she's pro-Israel, and running ads in Pennsylvania saying she's pro-Gaza. Incidentally, there was a video going around showing people in Gaza saying that they know that life for them will be much worse under Donald Trump, and would want a vote for Kamala Harris. But I also want to point out that The Economist, of all publications, which is a conservative, financially oriented publication, has said that if we had a vote, we would vote for Kamala Harris, which tells you something about the story around economics that has been portrayed so unfairly, and just kind of, there's just lots of lies. We've seen that problem. I just want to show everybody that we have I write a newsletter that's going to come out tonight. We're going to publish that. I'm going to give you a heads up and say that it's a note to undecided, persuadable viewers, is how I'm looking at it. And I'm saying to them that there are three kinds of people who are voting. So if you go to sreenet.substack.com, you can find my newsletter. And there I'm talking to people who are worried about the economy, people worried about Gaza, and people worried about anti-Semitism in America. And I talk to them and say, if you are even remotely persuadable, look at these points, and they don't come just from me, including I've put in somebody I can't stand, Mary. I can't stand this man. This is Bill Maher, but he's talking about what he calls Christmas Eve voters, people who had all year to vote for shop for Christmas, but vote at the last minute. And why are they like that? And are you surprised how many undecideds there still are?
I am, because it's such a clear choice. Then again, all of us we are into this all the time, every day. We are looking at every issue. And so, yeah, I find it very difficult, but there are people who really don't think about this. They have their lives to live. I was on a call with the Reverend William Barber and several low-income folks, low-wealth folks, as he talks about. And so many of them don't vote. They have a lot of power, but they have other concerns. So it's really difficult for them to really make that time. That's why he goes around and talks to them about issues like minimum wage, these things, which many Republicans have voted against. The federal minimum wage is still $7.25 an hour, which is insane, although some states have more. But he, in his personal capacity, not representing the Poor People's Campaign, has endorsed Harris. He has some problems with some of the policies, but he thinks that it's more optimistic that things will happen under President Harris that will be positive for people who are low wealth. And already the Biden administration, things like the child tax credit, which did reduce child poverty, which the Republicans are against. You look at a lot of these issues, lunches for school kids when they're out of school and don't have the free lunches. It was given to them by the federal government, and some of these states said they did not want to be dependent. And these states, for the most part, were Republican governors. So if people just look at the issues, I'm a columnist, I can say my piece, I report my columns, but I do understand that some people don't pay attention, and there's so much disinformation and misinformation out there, a lot of it financed, as we now know, by Russia, that is just perfectly happy to have chaos to prove that democracy is not a great system. And some of it is pretty darn convincing. And they do target groups in particular. They had an ad out that had people claiming to be Haitian immigrants that just got here, that are now citizens, and that they voted. And they traced it down to Russia. But when you are working on a campaign that's based on division and demonization of the other, this stuff can be effective, I'm sorry to say.
I want to just jump in real quick, Mary, following up on something Sree mentioned earlier about Michigan. This article in Asian American News was written by a friend of ours, Tiwa Chang, who is a journalist based in New York. Emotions run high in Michigan, signaling trouble for Harris, exactly to that point. He has some, he's reporting from Dearborn, Michigan, a large Arab American population. There's a lot of support for Jill Stein because of the war in Gaza. It's just something that, hopefully, depending on the state, depending on where this turns up, it won't be the difference maker, as Nader was a difference maker back in 2000 with Gore and Bush. But this is certainly something to keep an eye on. And I want to thank
Mhm.
Tiwa Cheng for his reporting on this.
Yeah, and Trump he has said he thinks that Netanyahu should finish the job, which is stunning. And their family members have business interests and property interests over there. You don't want to tell folks what to do, and I would not. I have friends, colleagues who have lost family members in Gaza, so I'm not going to be the person to tell them what they need to do in their own conscience. But other folks like Mehdi Hassan and others have said, well, one side, at least you feel you can have a conversation with them. And Donald Trump, at this point, he often uses the term Palestinian as a slur. When he said, oh, Chuck Schumer, he's practically a Palestinian. It's pretty rough, raw stuff.
Yeah. We only have about 10 minutes left, and we have a lot of things we want to get through. Today, he was also at a rally where he said Christians will have a higher agenda and access than they've ever had before. And that is where look at what's happening with my I guess it's my hand gestures are causing that with StreamYard, but that they are going to have more access to the White House. They're going to give priority to Christians, and when they say Christians, they mean evangelical white Christian nationalism is what they mean. So if anyone who happens to be South Asian and Christian, or Arab and Christian, or Black and Christian, and hears these and say, "Oh, good, they're talking to me." They're not talking about you. We have a friend, Professor Kati Joshi, who's written extensively about white Christian nationalism. And anybody who thinks that they're part of the wagon are going to find themselves off that wagon pretty fast. And that's what we have to be careful about. Here's Kiran Khalid says that a 77-year-old Chinese American woman knocked on my door today. She was an inspiration. She said she represented the immigrant dream that Trump would deny future generations. Just one of myriad reasons this election is so consequential. Mary, do you think Larry Hogan is making a strong case for himself as a never-Trumper who'd bring the McCain brand of bipartisan lawmaking? That's so interesting. So just to explain to everyone, Larry Hogan is running for the Senate. He is a governor he's a former governor of Maryland who has, during the pandemic, he spoke up against Trump, which is hard to do. He did that. But now he is running as a Republican for the Senate in Maryland. So that question to you.
Yes. Well, interesting you should ask that. Maryland is my home state. I grew up in Baltimore. And the thing of it is he's running against a Black woman, Angela Alsobrooks, who would be the first Black female senator from Maryland. And that is a reach even in Maryland, which has, people think of it as blue, but the western part of the state, the Eastern Shore, which they used to call during the civil rights era, Mississippi, because all of the violence and the civil rights protest in there. But a lot of folks have said, as Sree said, he didn't run as an independent. He's running as a Republican. So they're trying to make the cases. Mitch McConnell really wanted to recruit him to strengthen a Republican majority in the Senate. And the Democrats were already going to have a really tough time holding on to their Senate majority with folks like the West Virginia race and John Tester in Montana trying to stay a Democratic senator in a really red state. So I don't know. I mean, he would still be a part of the Republican majority. And I don't know that I would see him bucking the Mitch McConnell and the rest of the Republican senators when it came to things like blocking judicial appointments of a Democratic president. Because let's face it, even if Kamala Harris is elected, if she has to work with a Republican Senate, we saw what they did with Barack Obama as president. They blocked a Supreme Court appointee for him, which really helped change the makeup of this court, which is a very conservative court.
Already 6-3, it could become 7-2. And you remember McConnell was saying that it's too late in an election year in February, April, March, too early, too late. We got to wait for the new election. And when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies in October, he appoints
yes.
and make sure
Coming
that
around.
Amy Coney Barrett becomes a justice in this
Yeah.
country. So
And
the
people were already early voting at that time.
exactly. That tells you the lies and the hypocrisy of Mitch McConnell and so many others who complained about Trump privately, but publicly supported him, enabled him every way they could. We only have a few minutes left. We want to talk about some things to look forward to in the next 2 days. Let's remind everyone that we're going to be back right here 23 hours or so from now on Monday night. We're going to be here with Mary C. Curtis and other guests talking about the elections. And then we're going to be back Tuesday at noon to talk about the elections. And then Tuesday night at 9 p.m. election night. That's going to be very exciting. And then again at 11 p.m. we're going to be back that time for Indian Express and their USA election show. We have a very exciting show planned for that time as well. So we've got lots to talk about. Those of you who have your screen on right now, you can see our WhatsApp alerts. If you would like to get a WhatsApp when I'm live on the air, please join our WhatsApp alert and then just point your phone at it, and then you can join us and learn about our episodes as they come live. But let's go back to Mary. And Mary, what should you be looking at? What should we all be looking at over the next day or so?
Well, I think we'll see the candidates. You can see where they're going to see how their polls are looking and where their traveling will be. I hear that Trump will be ending it in Michigan, so he's probably liking his chances there. So any other surprises that come up, obviously, and just this enthusiasm and turnout, we'll see. Now, most states have ended their early voting. So now it's going to come down to Tuesday. So there'll be get out the vote efforts for both parties. So we'll be looking at that. I think at this point, enthusiasm from the bases and trying to get other people to get out and vote.
And that's of course going to determine what happens and how the election turns out. Folks, we are so grateful that you could all join us. As we wrap up here, one of the big things that happened, as you know, as a small October surprise, was the fact that on SNL, they diverted the plane that Kamala Harris was on so that she could go to New York and perform on Saturday Night Live. So we're going to just play this little video clip. I want to hear what you thought of it as you saw it either live or later, Mary. So here is Maya Rudolph.
Go ahead and put that full screen.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
here we
great.
Good. I tell you, she's getting better every time. She sounds like her. Oh.
Yeah, and Maya's terrific too, and I thought that worked really well.
Oh, it did.
We didn't know what was going to happen, where that could have gone, and it was, as you said, on a positive note, not attacking, not going after the candidate she's opposing. And we are out of time here, but I want to give you the last word, Mary, as we will then look forward to our shows coming up.
We don't know what's going to happen, but you have to say Kamala Harris has been the candidate for not that long, a little over 100 days. And she has really shown a lot of discipline in this campaign and has made it a race.
Yeah, that's very well put. Folks, that's Mary C. Curtis. That's Neil Parekh, our executive producer. And I'm Sree Sreenivasan. North Carolina, Washington, D.C. area, and New York, all represented here. We are so glad that you were able to join us. Please tag a friend right now. They can watch this live or later. And please check out our WhatsApp alert QR code so that you can use that to sign up and watch our show when we're back in about 23 hours later on Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday morning if you're watching in India or anywhere in the world. We are so delighted that you could all be with us. And Dr. Tachi, who has great shows herself, says, great show. Thank you very much. My email is sree@digimentors.group if you have any questions. And if you have any compliments, send them my way. Any blame, send it to Neil. Any complaints, send it to Neil at digimentors.group and Mary C.
But
Curtis.
not to Mary.
Yeah. We'll send all the blame to Mary.
Not to Mary.
Please,
Oh, no.
Please
I
follow.
feel like I know Dr. Tachi now. I mean, I see her every Sunday.
Exactly. She's great too. And we'll all get together and chat after the elections, I'm sure. Thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much for being with us. And we'll leave you with the card so you can make a note of when the show is for everyone. So thank you. And thank you, Kiran, and everyone for watching. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.